All right, so you got two handouts today. You got exercise 222, which we'll talk about, and you also got assignment 204. Assignment 204 is very similar to what we'll do today and then the next two class days. But basically, you're going to model and render both an interior and an exterior light fixture. So two separate light fixtures in two different contexts. There will be 4 total renderings that you need to do. You'll do an interior light fixture with a day rendering and a night rendering, so we can see the geometry of the light fixture and then see what it looks like when the light fixture is on. And then we'll do an exterior light fixture that's a day rendering and a night rendering. And that should make some sense because we want to see what it looks like with the lights on and what it looks like with the lights off. So you'll have 4 total renderings that'll be due in conjunction with assignment 204. It's not due until Wednesday the 18th, so you have a little bit of time to work on it. You'll have some time in class, although I'm just thinking right now I may extend that because I forgot that next Monday is a holiday. So I may need to adjust that. So give me a little bit of time to look at the calendar and confirm that, and I'll probably push it later because I didn't realize it was a holiday. So we won't be as far as we would like. So on exercise 222, yeah.
One question.
Yeah.
Monday is a holiday, but is Saturday, the on Saturday like the 9th?
I don't know. I have no idea. But Monday is definitely a holiday. I will not be here. Let's give me just a second to look really fast at where we are, and I'll tell you guys that right now. Yeah, let's push it to Monday the 23rd. Okay? So the handout says that it's Wednesday the 18th. It'll be Monday the 23rd. If you guys want to make a note of that. And I'll update it on the calendar as well. Okay, so for exercise 222, this is the part in the semester where people really start to get excited about V-Ray because everybody always wants to be able to do the night renderings with the lights and all that because it's really hard to draw that. Right? It's one thing to draw day stuff. You can sketch out day stuff and have pretty good renderings, but nights are difficult. And so to build into doing the nighttime rendering, the awesome nighttime rendering, we have to really start to explore lights and lighting and how they work. And today we're going to build at least 1 light fixture, maybe 2, so that you can get some experience with how the lights work in a context that's not your main model that you've been working on. So we're going to take a break from your assignment 205 project and just work in its own file and kind of play around with things a bit. So the first thing that I'm going to do today is I'm actually going to start by building the geometry that's going to hold the light. And I think that this is one of the critical things to understand is that we have 2 things. We have what we'll call the light fixture, right? The thing that holds the light. If we look up above us, we have these fluorescent lights, as attractive as they are. All right, that would be the light fixture. It's the thing that holds the light, right? Which includes the light bulb itself, right? So if I look up at this one, obviously the fluorescents that have the grills on them that you can't see, the one above me over here is missing that, so we could see the 2 tubes that represent the light fixture. In the fixture, we have the geometry of the fixture, and we have the light bulb itself, right? We're going to model the fixture, the geometry, and the light bulb in a file, and then we're going to place that file into a scene, and in the scene we're going to assign V-Ray lights to it. Right? So the lights from V-Ray are actually invisible objects that do the light casting, and they're separate from the geometry of the light fixture. Right? And this will make a little bit more sense as we go forward a bit, and I show you how this works. So I have an empty scene here with large objects, inches, as my template. And I'm going to go ahead and model a light. And the one that I typically do on this first one is a recessed can light because it works really nicely for illustrating what a spotlight can do in a scene. So it's rather generic, it's rather simple in its geometry, but at least it will show a fair amount of how this works. So I'm going to start with a circle, and I'll start the circle at point 0, 0, I hope, if I can. And I'm going to do a diameter of, let's do, I don't know, let's do a small one for fun. I've done the big one so many times. I want to do one that's small. So let's do 3.5 inches as my outside diameter. Right? I'm going to have a little bit of a trim kit. So I will either offset or do another circle. We'll do an offset with a distance of maybe a 1/2 inch in, something like that. And so you can start to see I'm aligning for what this would look like. Okay. Let me go ahead and take these two curves, and I can extrude curve. And I want it to be a solid. And we'll extrude it maybe, I don't know, negative 0.25 inches, something like that. Maybe that's too much. Maybe it sticks down too much for this size. Let me scale 1D. And we'll do it at maybe an 1/8. All right. Now notice that I went down, right, in this because I'm going to be ultimately looking at this light fixture from the underside, right? So I'm modeling it somewhat backwards. Okay. If you model it the other way and then flipped it over, that would be fine too. So I have this little bit of trim that's been assigned. I want to create inside of this what the light bulb would look like, or the lens of the bulb, depending. It's either a bulb or it's a lens. And so I'm going to go ahead and do maybe a ellipsoid, which is right here. Right? And we'll do it by diameter. And so the start of the first axis, I'll snap from this point to that point. Then I'll snap from these 2 points, and then I'll drop. Right, this is obviously the lens of the light. We'll drop it to be relatively benign, something like that. If I switch this into shaded mode, you can see that the underside there is what I'm trying to create, that little light fixture. Okay, and I can actually trim off the top part of this because it really doesn't matter. So let me duplicate the edge of that, and then I'll trim, and we'll get rid of that piece. So we have just the bottom half. Okay. In reality, obviously, a light fixture like this would have a bunch of geometry that would be up inside the ceiling cavity. It's never going to be seen, so there's no reason for me to model it. Okay. Now, I could probably add a little bit more finesse. This is a rather generic or ugly piece of trim. So let me go ahead and modify this trim to make it a little bit more attractive. Let me just use a polyline here. Go down. Let's go over maybe 0.25. Like that. Something like this. Get rid of that. And then I'm going to just sweep this profile. Let's make it rounded. Why not? We can. So let's do a fillet instead. With a radius of 0.0625. That would be a 1/16 of an inch. All right, so I just rounded those a little bit so they'd be slightly more attractive. And then I'll do a sweep. 1. My rail is going to be that. My cross-section curve will be this. In that direction. And I'll say OK. And so now I have a little bit nicer than just the generic piece. So this is going to fit on my ceiling. The center of this object was at 0.00, which is what I want. So this is essentially all the geometry I need to make. Okay? I have the lens and I have the trim kit, both established. Now, before I move on, I do need to save it, and I also need to organize it so that I can use it as a block. So the first thing I'll do is I'll save it. And let's put this in a 221 folder. Is today 221 or 222? 222, sorry. You can see ones from last year. We'll call this a 3-inch 3 can. Okay. Apparently I did a 3-inch last year. Go figure. I didn't remember doing it. I'll go ahead and click on Save. Okay, and now I need to go ahead and apply some materials. So we'll go ahead and load up V-Ray here. And under Scene Materials, I'm going to load a material off my flash drive here. And I'll pick some kind of like a white, for lack of something better. I could do metal. That would be fine. Let's see. I'm going to pick like a white plastic. It doesn't look like I have white plastic, so I'll go ahead and load black plastic for right now, and then I'll modify it. So here under my color, it's black right now. If I switch that to white and preview it, I'll have a white plastic, which is fine. Let's go ahead and rename it. So we'll call this plastic white. I'll say OK. The white porcelain is also a pretty good look if you want it to be a little bit shinier. It depends on the look you're going for. Okay, so I'll go ahead and I'll apply this to my trim. So let me apply material to selection. There it is. And so now comes the tricky part. So in modeling a lens or a light bulb, we actually have to create a special material that's called an emissive material. It's a material that glows. And so we have to build that in because when we look at a light bulb, the bulb itself is going to glow. Okay? And so this material, called an emissive material, we actually have to create. There is a tutorial to this online. If you go right here to its V-Ray 8.15, that will walk through. And I'm actually going to reference this because I don't remember off the top of my head all of these color values. So I'm going to jump back and forth to do this. So I'm going to jump back to Rhino, go to Materials, and under Scene Materials, I'm going to right-click and say Create Material, Standard. And then I'm going to rename this to be Bulb or Light Bulb, whatever works for you. OK, so now I have light bulb, so I'm going to jump back to this tutorial here. Right? We're going to right-click and add the emissive material. So let me go back here. I'm going to right-click on light bulb, go to Create Layer, Emissive. And we see that we now get this drawer called Emissive in addition to the drawer called Diffuse. It's kind of like when we added a reflection to the material. This is Emissive is obviously a glow. Okay, and so then we'll jump back once again, and I have these values, okay, that I have to do. The emissive color is 200, 161, and 82, and the emissive transparency is 100, 100, 100. We'll start with that. So 200, 161, and 82. So right here under color, it's going to be 200, 161, and 82. Okay, which is kind of an ugly yellow color. My transparency is going to be set at 100, 100, 100. I'll go ahead and say OK. So those are set. Now I'll jump back again and look at the next set of values. My diffuse color will be 155, 155, 155, and my diffuse transparency will be 0, 0, 0. So let me once again jump back to Rhino. Color is going to be 155. 155 and 155. And my transparency should be all zeros, which it is. Okay? So if I preview this, if I click on preview, it's kind of a dull color. Okay? However, I have something called intensity. And as I increase this intensity, this is going to start to glow. So let's increase it to, say, 10 for a second. And you can see that it gets lighter. And you can see a little bit of the light spilling out against the checkerboard pattern. You probably can't see it up here, but you can see it on your screens. And we're going to jump the intensity all the way up to 100, okay? Which is going to be almost white in this, but when we use it in our actual scene, it will be a little bit less. So we'll go ahead and right-click on light bulb and say Apply Material to Selection. And so now we have a can light that has a light bulb material and a trim material. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and save this. And then I'm going to jump to my layers, and I'm going to do some renaming here. We'll call this can light 3-inch. And then I'm going to make a sublayer for the bulb. and I'm going to actually call this CL3 bulb, and I'm going to make a sublayer for CL3 trim. Okay, and the reason I'm doing that is just so that I can distinguish them down the road, right? CL3 meaning a can light 3-inch. Okay, then we'll go ahead and change the. Make this a little bit wider so we can see it here. We're going to change the trim to be on the trim layer. Change the object layer. The bulb, we'll change the object layer. Perfect. And I'll get rid of these extra layers that we don't need. And so now it's nice and I can't. Okay, so I have can light 3-inch. I've got 2 sublayers. We'll save it one more time. And I'll then use this as a block in a future file. So if we go back to exercise 222 today, right, I've included a sample night environment for you to try out your light blocks. Okay, this is to make your life easier. So we'll go ahead and we'll click on the sample light environment so that it'll download. And I'm going to copy it over to my flash drive in today's folder. If I can find it, today was 222. And I'll go ahead and paste it. So it's called Sample Night Scene. I'm going to go ahead and double click it to open it. Okay, so I have in this sample night scene, I have basically a wall and a roof, which will allow you to mess around with things. I also have an infinite plane, and I've adjusted the sky to be like night. Okay, so everything should be set up for you so that you don't have to do anything to get the scene set up other than drop your light and create your V-Ray light. So I'm going to use a little bit of a guide here of a line that goes diagonally so that when I place my block, I can put it right in the center of this object. And I'm going to go to Edit, Blocks, Insert Block Instance. And I'm going to pick that can light that I just saved onto my flash drive. This was the one from today. I'll go ahead and open it, and I'll say OK. Remember, I want to embed and link. And I'll say OK. And it'll come in as a little tiny can light right there. And so I'll drop it in. Let me zoom selected so that we can see it. And I'll drop it in as a little can light there. Now, in reality, maybe I shouldn't put it, because it's so small, maybe I should put it a little bit closer to the wall. So let me go ahead and move this. Look at it in the top view for a second here. We'll get a better wash if it's closer to the wall. Something like that. And maybe I'll create a couple more of them for the fun of it. Okay? So let me jump back to my, my rendered view here. And I'm going to go to Set View. I have a view set up as Render 1. I have those light fixtures that have been pushed in. If I were to just render it right now, I would get a result. Where I'd see the bulbs of the light fixture there, but I wouldn't really see any shadow, any light cast on the wall. Okay, so I'm getting the glow of the lights, but I'm not getting the lights themselves. And so this is where we actually have to put in some V-Ray lights to mimic the lighting conditions. Okay, so I'm going to go to my V-Ray toolbar, and instead of, we've done directional light before, I'm going to use what's called a spotlight. Okay, so I'll click on the spotlight tool. And we'll start up here, and I'm going to turn off point snap and intersection, and I'm going to snap to the center. There it is. And I want the diameter of this spotlight to be 2 feet. Right? And I want my height of this spotlight to be 1 foot. And a lot of times it's easier to use the front view to specify 1 foot. Okay? So anything in this ratio, 2 by 1, works pretty well for a can light. Okay? Now, in order for this to work, I have to make sure that the point, the origin of the light, is below any geometry. If it's contained within geometry, it's never going to show up. So I want this to be below, and we don't actually snap to any object. We just want it to be below my scene here. All right, so we see it there, okay, cast on the wall. And so if I jump back to my render 1, right, there we can see it. Okay, I have to do a few things before I actually do the rendering, right? And these are again written out in your exercise because we get into a lot of specifics about certain colors for the light, etc. Okay, so over here with the light selected and the light properties showing, right, we're going to start to adjust a few things here. First thing is we have to have the light enabled. The next thing, we're going to change the color. So right now the color is at 255, 255, 255. We're going to change that to be 255, 214, and 170, right, which has a little bit of a yellow tint in it. This is designed for incandescent or halogen light. Right? We're moving the direction of LED light where we can really skew the colors in different directions. We can have it more white, etc. But generally speaking, when you're doing these renderings, it's nice to have a little bit of yellow in the light because it makes it look realistic or look real. So that's why I put the little bit of yellow in it. Okay? So we'll go ahead and say OK. Then under intensity, right, or actually below intensity, we're going to go to units, and we're going to change the units to radiant power, or a capital W, which is essentially watts. This is what we're used to. We're used to going to the hardware store and buying a 40-watt bulb. Right? This is the easiest way of translating it, because if we convert our units to radiant watts, we can imagine this is just a regular light bulb. So let's say 40 watts for right now. Okay? Then further down here, under decay, we need to specify inverse square, which is what real light is. It's an inverse square decay. Okay? So I've adjusted that as well. I'm just making sure I've got everything. Okay? And so once I have all of these settings correct, we can go ahead and perform another rendering. And this time, we'll get the light itself, and then we'll get a cone that's being reflected on the wall, which if you go home and you have can lights and you turn on your can lights, this is what it looks like, right? Which is the idea. So the 2 by 1 ratio of the spotlight gives us this kind of an arc. If I change this, and I'm going to do it for these other lights, you'll see how it changes. Okay? So once again, I'll go ahead and pick a spotlight, and I'll come up to this one, and we'll snap to the center again. And this time, we'll do it at, let's say, 1 foot. Oops. Hold on a second. It helps if you do a diameter of 1 foot. And then I will do a height of 1 foot. Okay, so instead of a 2 by 1, this is a 1 by 1. I'll move it again. Remember, it can't be contained within any geometry, something like that. We'll come over and we'll adjust the properties again. 255, 214, and 170. 40 watts. Inverse square. Those are set. And then I'll do one more for this piece. And I'm doing this as an illustration of the differences. Okay? So let me see here. Come on. Sorry, hold on a second. Spotlight. Diameter of 4 feet. With a height of 1 foot. So in this instance, I'm keeping the heights all the same. It's the ratio of the lights more than anything else. Okay? I still need to make a few adjustments here. 255, 214, 170 watts, 40 inverse square. Okay. The other thing that I want to mention to you, I'm guessing that my 3 lights are going to work. Just like when you go to the hardware store and you buy a pack of light bulbs, sometimes you get a bad bulb and they just don't work. Okay? V-Ray has the same thing happen. I don't know why, and I can't predict it, but every once in a while you just have a bad light, and you got to delete it and you have to create a new one, and there's no way around it. Generally speaking, I think these are going to work, but you never know. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and go to Set View, Render 1, and I have those 3 lights, and we'll go ahead and we'll render. Maybe. Okay, so 3 lights, 3 different cones, right? Remember, this was the more narrow cone, so the light is a tighter circle and a smaller arc on the wall. This is the mid-range, right? This one being the broadest spectrum of light, right? So depending on the look that you're trying to go for, you may like one or the others of these looks, right? Sometimes you might end up with a spotlight, something like this, that instead of, let's make one more here. Actually, I'll just redo the light here. Maybe you want it to be a very fine beam that's pointed down, or like a flashlight or something like that. We would do a spotlight that maybe had a diameter of 4 inches and a height of 1 inch, or a height of 1 foot. You can see that my cone is much more narrow now. And when we go to do the render, oops. Sorry, I have to adjust a few properties first. 255, 214, 170 watts, 40 inverse square. We'll render. So you can see that I narrowed the beam quite a bit, and now we get a much sharper circle on the ground with a much smaller cone of light. Right? So the geometry of this light really makes a difference in terms of what you can create. Okay? So I'm going to ask all of you to do some kind of a light like this using a spotlight. But the other type of light that I want to explore with you is what's called a point light. And this would be for a light fixture that would have light going in all directions rather than just down. Okay? So something like a lampshade or something is more in that category. So I'm going to go ahead and jump away from this for just a second. I'll open another Rhino file here. And I'm going to do a large object, inches. And this time I'll build like a floor lamp or something. Okay, so let's go ahead and start again at 0.00. And let's say the base here is maybe a diameter of 1 foot and a height of 1.5 inches, something like that. And then I'll put a let's go up maybe I'm thinking. Let's go over. And let me something like that. Okay, so I have this arc. I'm going to use, again, a little circle here, and we'll say that the diameter should be maybe 5/8 inch. And then I'll sweep this along that rail. So let me go to sweep, 1. There's my rail. There's my circle. Okay. That's providing the tube that's holding the light. I probably need to sweep that down this section as well, or somehow do a little rod down this section. We'll just let them intersect for right now. I can spend more time doing the geometry, but you guys don't need to watch me model. So I have something like that, and then I'm going to want some kind of a lampshade or something to appear at the top here. And so I'm going to do something rather simple. Right? We'll do something, maybe we'll do a foot, and we'll do a foot hanging. Move. Vertical. And then let me explode this so I can get rid of the top and get rid of the bottom. Okay, so it may or may not be the most attractive light fixture in the world, but we're doing something so that you guys can see the point here. Just want to drop that down a little bit more. Okay, so we'll call that our light fixture. So once again, I need to start to control some of the various options that are here. I need to first off start assigning materials and control my layers. So we'll call this floor lamp 1, and then I want a sublayer for stand and a sublayer for lampshade. All right, and so we'll take these objects here plus this, and we'll put that on the stand layer. And we'll take this object and we'll put it on the shade layer. All right, and so now it's a time to start assigning the materials. We can get rid of these. We don't need those layers. So let's go ahead and go to materials. Let's load a material. And we'll go to my flash drive under resources, V-Ray materials. I guess this time we'll do metal. I don't know, let's make it shiny, why not? Right, we'll do chrome. And so I'm going to apply this to the layer this time. Again, it doesn't matter whether I'm applying to the object or the layer. These are small enough files, it's easy enough to work through. And then for the light shade, I have one I think that's already been made, if I remember correctly. The question is, where did I put it? I think it's under translucent. No, apparently not. Did I put it under fabric? Huh. Let me take a quick look. Is there a miscellaneous? Flesh. That sounds good. I thought I made one, and I thought I posted it. Maybe I didn't download it into this. Give me just a second here. I must not have actually posted it. All right, well, I apologize, so we'll have to create it from scratch. Okay, so let me go ahead and I'm going to create a new material. I'm going to go to load material, and I'm going to start with, under translucent, I'm going to start with one of the wax We'll try like the lit candle wax. This is an emissive. Never mind, I don't want that one. Let me load material. Let's try this one. Ugh, that's horrible. Let me just create a new material. Sorry. Let me go to standard material. And let's go ahead and give this kind of a tannish color. Something like that. And let's change under diffuse transparency. Let's go dark gray. This is going to take a little bit of work on my part to get it to look right. But we'll go ahead and leave it like that. And then let me rename it to lampshade. All right. And so I'm going to apply that lampshade material to my shade. So I'm going to go ahead and apply material to layer. Shade. Okay. All right. And then let me go ahead and save this as lamp. So I'm going to go to File, Save. For lamp. I'll say OK. So there it is. And we'll jump back to my simple night scene here. I can choose to leave these on, or I can turn them off. Depends. If I go ahead and bring in that block, let me go to Edit, Blocks, Insert Block Instance. And instead of the can light, I'm going to bring in the floor lamp. OK. Embed and link. And we'll drop it into the scene. Let me go ahead and move this a little bit. I'm going to look at it in the top view. If I can drop it out here. And then we'll look at it in the rendered view. Let me go to Render 1. Render 1. And now if I were to render this right now, I'd still have my lights from before. And I'd see my nice chrome stand, nice and shiny, and I'd see my little lampshade, right? But this isn't actually lit yet. So I need to put a light inside of this. And depending on the view, I could put a bulb inside of it, but I think the shade's going to block the bulk of the bulb, so I didn't waste my time putting that in. So let's go ahead and insert a bulb. Now in this case, if I were to put a spotlight inside of this, zoom selected here, if I were to put a spotlight inside of this, it would shine straight down, or maybe I could put one shining straight up. But in reality, I need the light going kind of in all directions at once. So instead of a spotlight, I'm going to use something called a point light, which is right here. And it works essentially the same as the spotlight. I'm going to snap it to the center at the bottom here for right now. There it is. I have to, again, adjust the properties. Similar set of properties. So 255, 214, and 170. We're going to go with watts. And I'm going to go up a little bit. I'm going to go to a 60 watt with an inverse square. Okay. I'm also going to move this up so that it's not at the bottom of my light fixture, but in the center. So let me move, and I'll move it up. It just needs to approximate where the center would be. Something like that. Now we'll go back to my render view, and I'll go to Set View, Render 1, and we'll go ahead and render it and have a look. So now my lampshade is glowing, as it should, right, because there's a bulb inside of it. I get a little bit of light reflected on the top here on that piece of chrome, but we can also see up here on the ceiling. Can you guys see that? Yeah, you can see it better than I can, actually. There's a circle that's being cast, and there's also the shadow of the lamp that's being cast. So we know that it's doing a pretty good job. Likewise, down below, we'd have a similar circle with a shadow being cast. Now, this might be a little bit hard to view, so we might want to turn off these other lights. So let's go ahead and reorganize my layers a little bit. And go ahead and create a new layer. We'll call this Lights. And I'm going to do a sub layer, and we'll call this Spots. And I'm going to take all three of these spots and put them on the spot layer so that I can turn them off. And now we can render it again. And we're still going to see the emissive materials up above here. But we'll have a better sense of the light that's being provided by this lampshade itself. Okay? So that's a point light, which is giving light in all directions, obviously being controlled a little bit by the shade in terms of what's getting brighter light or less light. If I was unhappy with this lampshade, right, I could come back to my floor lamp and I could modify it. Right? If I wanted the material to be a little bit more white, for example, we could go back to my lampshade and I could change the material to be a little bit lighter in color. I could also add a map to the transparency so I could have some holes in this. So let me go to text bitmap and let's see if I can find a map to use. Go to resources. I'm going to load a map from one of my metals. Should have some kind of a screen. Why am I not seeing metal screens? Right, if we were looking at this as a thumbnail, you could see what it would look like. It's that pattern. I'll go ahead and I'll open it. I'll say OK, and then let me go ahead and preview it. It's the opposite of what I wanted. So let me go back and check the box for invert. Say OK, and if I were to preview it, it would be a screen with holes punched in it. And now if I were to save this, and then I go back to my night scene block manager, it doesn't crash on me. We have linked file is newer. Let's update that linked file. And we're going to replace the existing material because that's what I changed. It's been updated. And now we can render it again. I did not texture map the circles, so we're a little bit, it's going to be a little bit larger, right? But if I texture mapped, I could solve that problem. But notice that we're getting the shadows being cast by all of the little punched holes, so you get where you can kind of tweak and play with these to get better and better results. Does that make sense so far? So today, for exercise 222, I want you to play with a point light and a spotlight. Those are the two primary lights that we're going to work with. There are other types of lights that are available in Rhino. They're much harder to give you a script for these are the settings. So like a rectangular light, for example, is a great kind of light, and I'll actually use it a little bit later on, and I'll show you a place where it'll work. But it involves a lot more experimentation to get the settings right. Where a spotlight, if you generally follow these rules, you'll generally get good quality spotlight. A point light, if you generally follow these rules, you'll generally get a good point light. Right? That's why we start with those two and get you comfortable with lights and lighting. Are there any global questions about this? No? Okay. I'll turn you loose, and if you have questions, let me know, and I'll come by and help you out.